Hey everyone, welcome back to Ask the Pastors. We just want to take a few minutes today and discuss some questions that we get asked regularly, some questions that get texted in. We love just another opportunity to help our congregation think and to chew a little bit. So today, instead of Pastor Todd, we have Parker McGoldrick here with us today. He is a church planter that we are sending very soon out of First Family Church. We're so excited for you. So thanks for joining us today on Ask the Pastors.
Absolutely.
Parker, kick us off. What is the question that we are wrestling with today?
Yes, the question is, how can we continue to deepen in our understanding of theology? Theology is kind of a big word, and a lot of times it's like confusing and it seems like far-fetched, but how can we, and why should we? Why should we continue to learn and grow in our understanding of God, and how do we do that? So a little bit about my story. I went to Bible college at Cedarville University to originally study music, but then the Lord was working in my heart and calling me into ministry. And as I was in class after class after class, it was almost forced upon me to keep, diving deep and going deep. But the more that I studied and the more that I would see God and His beauty, the more it became like, okay, I actually wanted to learn and I wanted to grow. And it started affecting my relationships, my friendships, my family relationships, different things like that. And I was seeing it wasn't just an intellectual exercise, although that is a temptation sometimes, but it was actually transforming my heart. And the more I was knowing God, the more that I was loving God and loving others. And I think, that's part of it too, is that you can't love and serve a God that you don't know. So I think that's why it's important to continually go and deepen our understanding of who God is in theology.
Yeah. My story is a little similar, but I was a lot older than you were. I was already a pastor. I was a youth pastor, and I remember just listening to some of my favorite preachers, and they had a depth and an understanding and a love for this truth that I didn't have. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
I had
absolutely.
the basics of theology, and I was teaching students, and by God's grace, He, blessed some things.
Right.
And I remember just reading these guys and listening to these guys and thinking, I don't have a clue what they're talking about. They would mention a word or a phrase or debate, and I was just so ignorant, and my ignorance made me chase depth. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
and I remember getting together with some guys like Andy Manis and just some of my friends, and I remember just getting together with them I don't want to be ignorant any longer.
Right.
And then the moment we started this journey, a new world opened up. Man, I want to know and love these truths that my favorite preachers like John Piper and they love and they know, and so that just kind of created an appetite that I didn't have previously.
Yeah, absolutely. And it kind of changes from an exercise or a discipline to a love and a joy. At least that's what it was for me too. And part of it too for my story was I had a lot of questions about faith, and some of my friends are walking away from the faith. Some of my circumstances in life were really hard and difficult, and so I just had questions, and I was like, what? Okay, I grew up loving and serving this God, but now my worldview is such that it doesn't really compute with the God that I thought I knew, and so what does that mean? How do I keep doing that? And then it really turned, when I was in seminary, I remember being in a class, and one of my professors said, I just want to know God. I just want to know God.
Yeah.
And as soon as he said that, I was like, oh, yes, that's it. The reason for this is just I want to know God. And when you know God, you love Him, you serve Him. It changes the way you live and act and think and do all those things. And so for me, I think that's the importance of why should we do this?
Amen.
It's just to know God. And then Paul says that knowing God is actually God knowing us and His Son. And so anyway, so that's kind of why I think why it's important to continually deepen your understanding. But
it takes work, doesn't it?
Oh yeah.
It doesn't just come easily or naturally.
Right.
It's something you've got to dedicate yourself to. I've used this illustration before. I think knowing and learning theology is a lot like cooking a steak, right? They fire up the grill, take a $20 piece of meat from Hy-Vee and throw it on a grill. Anybody can do it, right? Anybody can know basics. Anybody can study it. Anybody can do it. But if you want to know the beauty of it, the depth of it, it takes work.
You want to do it well.
It takes work. You got to learn skills. You got to read about it. You got to study what other people know about it. You got to learn steak. You got to marinate it. You got to learn about temperatures. You got to look about time. And so if you want to be an expert at it, it's going to take energy and effort and time.
Yeah. So next time I want a steak, you're saying to come over to your house.
I'm not. Well, maybe. I would like to say I know how to cook a steak, but probably not.
I think too, one of the things that was helpful for me in the how, if we're kind of transitioning from the why now to the how, is God, for some reason, decided to reveal himself in a book. And so the very nature of being able to understand and know God is through reading.
Yeah.
And I am not a natural, now I can't stop reading, but I'm not a natural reader. I never was. And once I kind of got into the habit of like, all right, starting 5 minutes a day, just reading. And then, okay, well now it's 10 minutes a day. And then it just keeps going, like just starting really small, but getting into the habit of just reading. Yes, your Bible, but also other books, other Christian living books or theology books or things that we have in the library. Like getting into the habit of reading, because that's how you grow. If you want to be a learner and to love God, he revealed himself in a book. So it's part of the how to grow is to start like the habit of just reading.
So maybe at the end we'll get to some recommendations on maybe some books. But the only thing I would add to that is do it with somebody. I think I've grown the most over conversations about the books that I've read or the sermons I've heard. And so I'm sometimes a distracted reader or a distracted listener, but when you're in conversations, I think that is just pulled out the depth of what I heard or what I read. I remember going through Systematic Theology of Wayne Grudem, and we did it in a group. It was called the Barnabas Project, and we'd get together with guys, and so you'd read a chapter and then discuss it. And I'd read the chapter and be like, oh, that was pretty good. But then that hour-long conversation about that chapter just brought out more depth than I even thought I knew or understood.
Because somebody else might see an insight that you missed. You might see an insight that somebody else
challenge something, and you're like, oh, I never thought about that. That's an interesting challenge. Let's discuss that. And so I think that's been really helpful to me. So read, listen, and then discuss, and share life with people, and just spend time discussing theology with.
And I think an important thing is it could be really easy, especially as you start to read or as you start to do this, to feel like you've made it and get it. This is my struggle, is like this kind of like arrogant, like, Paul says knowledge puffs up, right? And that is the danger, that if your theology doesn't affect your hands or how you live, then it's not theology. And so theology is, while it's learned by reading and studying and conversing and discussing, it's only lived out by living out, by how it changes your heart and your hands and what you do in your community and with the people that you know and love. So, Paul says knowledge puffs up, but love builds up.
That's right.
Amen.
All right, let's end our time today with maybe some recommendations. What would you say maybe a good place to start, either authors or preachers or... What have God used in your life to kind of help you?
Absolutely. I think the best book I've read on reading the Bible is called Read the Bible for a Change by Ray Lubeck. It is just a very good approach to because sometimes if you read the Bible over and over again, it can feel like running into a brick wall over and over again because you don't have another source to help you understand what's going on. So Read the Bible for a Change by Ray Lubeck really transformed my Bible reading, and it helped me a lot. Also, just the Bible Project's website and resources. They've got blogs, podcasts, videos. That's a supplement to your Bible reading that can come alongside it as well. So those are a few.
I'd definitely say Wayne Grudem's Systematic Theology. It's a hefty book, but just take your time and read through it. And then if you're more of a listener, all of his lectures are on iTunes. And so you can go to your podcast app and look up Wayne Grudem's Systematic Theology. You can listen to all of his lectures on the book. So you're in the car, you're on a walk, you can work your way through Systematic Theology pretty quickly. I think a guy, we don't agree with everything he says or teaches, but I think the guy that has really transformed just my understanding, my depth of understanding, would be Michael Horton. He has lots of books, he preaches lots of sermons, and he has a podcast as well called The White Horse Inn. And 25 minute sessions on aspects of theology you probably have never wrestled with. And so he loves to kind of challenge and ask really good questions. And so I've just eaten up everything Michael Horton has read.
And speaking of podcasts, there's this podcast called Knowing Faith. And I think it's the Village Church. Jen Wilkin, it used to be JT English as well. And they just go through theologies. Sometimes they go through different texts. Knowing Faith is a phenomenal way to start kind of increasing your your theological appetite.
My wife loves that podcast, so I
Yeah.
feel like Jen Wilkins' voice is in my house every day,
All the
all day
time.
long. I'm like, who's
You're like,
Casey talking?
Jen?
No, that's
Jen?
Jen.
Is that you?
Jen's in my house a lot, so
That's
we
awesome.
love that podcast
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah, it's a great one.
I know we didn't answer everything, but hopefully we just kind of helped reinforce the importance of knowing and deepening our theological understanding. It is worth the time, energy, and effort. And it's fun.
It
and
is,
like
yeah.
I think the greatest point you made was it helps us know God. And that is worth any effort or time
Yeah.
you put into it. So
Yeah.
Parker, it has been blessed doing
Thank
this
you.
with you
Thanks
today,
for having
man.
me.
Thanks for joining us,
Yeah.
and thank you everybody for listening to this week's episode of Ask the Pastors. See you next week.